All right, Shalom. Okay, so this is a book I stumbled upon. It's pretty interesting. I made it a little ways through. I just want to show you a few things that I found so far here. And it's called The Discoveries of the World from Their First Original unto the Year of Our Lord 1555 by Antonio Galvano, governor of the Ternate. Corrected quote and published in England by Richard Hack Louis, 1601. Okay. All right. So I'm not going to take you through the whole thing because it's a long book. Um, but what screamed at me right away about this book is that it talks about the history of the Bible as if it is actually a fact, which it is, of course. But you know that these books today talk about it like it's some kind of story. Well, here in this book, they talk about the flood, they talk about the Hebrews, they talk about the creation of man, everything as if it's actual fact. And so here we go. Discoveries in different times and seasons about those who first navigated. While I had a desire to gather together some old and new discoveries, which have been made by sea and by land with their just times and situations, they seem to be two things of so great difficulty that being confused in the authors of them, I determined once to desist fro any such purpose. For the touching for touching the course of time, the Hebrews declare that from the beginning of the world to the flood were 1656 years. The Suenti interpreters make mention of 2242, and St. Augustine reckoneth 2262. In the situations likewise there be many differences. Some affirm that they were the Greeks. They're looking for. This is all about the discoveries of the world since the time of the flood. Okay. Some affirm that they were the Greeks. Others say the Phoenicians. Others also the Egyptians. The people of India agree not hereunto, affirming that they were the first that sailed by sea, namely the Tabancos, which now we call the Chinois. And they allege for the proof of this that they be lords of the Indies, even unto the Cape of Bona Speranka, which is the Cape of Good Hope. I believe they bring this up a lot here. And the island of St. Lawrence, which is inhabited by them and all along the sea, as also the Jayawans, Timors, Celebes, Macaferes, Malucos, Borneos, Mindananos, Lucons, Lucoios, Japons, and other islands, being many in number, and the firm lands of Cochin, China, Laos, Siamis, Brahmas, Pegu, Aracones, till you come unto Bengala, and besides this, New Spain, Peru, Brazil, the Antilles, with the rest adjoining unto them, as appeareth by the fashion and manners of the men and women, and by their proportions, having small eyes, flat noses, with other proportions to be seen. And to this day, many of the islands of the countries are called by the names of Bato China, Bocho China, which is as much to say as the countries of China. Further, it appeareth by histories that the ark of Noah rested upon the north parts of the mountains of Armenia, which stands in 40 degrees and upwards, and that immediately thereupon Scythia was the first peopled, for that it is a high land and appeared first after the flood. Um, and seeing the province and country of the Tabenkos is one of the chiefest of all Tartary, as they report, it is thought that they were the most ancient inhabitants and men of the most ancient navigations. Okay, I'm gonna try to pick and choose and get most everything of what seems to be any kind of need to be seen, any kind of recognition. So, anyhow, it is further said that the people of China were sometimes lords of the most part of Scadia, and sailed ordinarily along that coast, which seemeth to reach unto 70 degrees towards the north. Cornelius Nepos is the author of this, who particularly affirmeth that in the time that Metellus, the fellow consul of Afranius, was proconsul in France, the king of Swabia sent unto him certain Indians, which came thither in a ship from this country, coming by the north and by the flats of Germany, and it is probable that they were people of China, for that they from 20, 30, and 40 degrees upward have strong ships and clinchers that can well brook the seas and endure the cold and intemperate of such northerly regions. As for Kambaya, there is shipping also in it, and the people by report have used the seas many years. But it seemeth not that they were any of them which came into France, for that they traffic only to Cairo, and are men indeed of little traffic and less clothing. As for those which escaped the destruction of the flood, they were therewith so amazed that they durst not descend into the plains and low countries, but kept the hills. Could that be the Anakims? And we read of Nimrod, who 130 years after the flood built the Tower of Babel, intending thereby to save himself if there should come any more such floods. Therefore it seemeth that they which first came to be sailors were those which dwell in the east, in the province of China, although others contrariwise hold them which dwell in the west, as in Syria, to have used the trade of the sea soonest after the flood. But this contention about the antiquity of navigation I leave to the Scythians and Egyptians, who are at great variance and difference in this matter, for each of them challenged unto themselves the honor of the first sea travail. All right, now we're getting into the part where it talks about the discovery, so I think we're going to be able to just keep going for a while. But we'll see. I'll pause it if we get to some erroneous information. There be some well seen in antiquities which say that in the 143 year after the flood, Tubal came by sea into Spain, whereby it seemeth that in those times navigations were used into our parts out of Ethiopia. And they also say farther that not long after this, the queen Semiramis went against the Indians in that river whereof they took their name, and therein gave, is that the Hindus possibly? And therein gave battle unto the king Strabrobates, wherein he lost 1,000 ships, which being credible by the ancient history, proveth manifestly that in those parts, in those times, were many ships, and the seas frequented in good numbers. In the 650th year after the flood, there was a king in Spain named Hesperus, who in his time, as it is reported, went and discovered as far as Cape Verde and the island of St. Thomas, whereof he was prince. And Gonçalo Fernandez, shout out to the person gave me a comment a couple videos back about the EZ at the end of the name. They said that was also having some kind of determination about who the peoples were with that name. Um, and also English Jonah, man. English Jonah commented about Moortown in Jamaica, and I've been looking into that. Anyway, so and Gonzalo Fernandez of Oviedo, the chronicler of antiquities, affirmeth that in his time the islands of the West Indies were discovered and called somewhat after his name, Hesperides. And he allegeth many reasons to prove it, reporting particularly that in the 40 days they sailed from Cape Verde unto those islands. There are others that say that the like was done from this cape unto the islands of St. Thomas and the Isle de Principe, and that they be in the Hesperides and not the Antilles. And they do not differ far from reason, seeing in those times many years after they did use to sail only along the coast, not passing through the main ocean sea, for they had neither altitude nor compass then in use, nor any mariner so expert. According to the opinion of writers, it cannot be denied but that there were many countries, islands, capes, isthmus, and points which now are grown out of knowledge, because the names of them are found in histories. But the age of the world and force of waters have wasted and consumed them, and separated one country from another, both in Europe, Asia, Africa, New Spain, Peru, and other places that have been discovered but have been hidden by the continual struggle going on betwixt the water and the land. All right, this little paragraph here is interesting. I seen this video by Written in Stone talking about the Scythians and their love for drugs all the way back then. And I just want to talk for a minute about some differences that I've seen, especially now that I have a child. I see the way my wife and her family and people care for their children and the way that some other people care for their children. I think that that's the main difference between us, is that y'all be putting a lot of care into your children. And like my brother and his wife, man. Oh. Anyway, I don't want to get into all that, but I'd like to say there's two types of people, man. Fun people and not fun people, and you know who's who. And I always see them in the limo at work, and y'all be lit right from the get-go, man. Y'all having fun, man, shaking and having fun, all that. But then people that look like me, man, that I see them, they're pretty quiet and not having fun until they get the alcohol flowing, and then they'd be whooping and hollering and all that. But before that, all right, so anyway, after the flood, 800 years, we read that the city of Troy was builded by the Dardans, and that before that time they brought out of the Indies into Europe by the Red Sea spices, drugs, and that's why I bring up about the Scythians and their love for drugs, and many other kinds of merchandises, which were there more abundant than they now be. Whereunto, if credit may be given, we may conceive that the sea was of old haunted and frequented, seeing that then they were seeing that then they of the east had so much and so great traffic with them of the west, that they brought their merchandise unto an haven which was named Arsinoe, being that which is at this day is called Suez, standing in 30 degrees on the north part of the Arabian Gulf. It is also by authors farther written. Anyway, we're going to skip that part. And then here we go. 900 years or thereabout after the flood and before the destruction of Troy, there was a king in Egypt called Sesostris, who, perceiving that the former courses and passages for the carrying of merchandise by men and beasts were chargeable to the one and most painful to the other, provided to have a way or stream cut out of the land from the Red Sea unto an arm of the river Nilus, or Nile, which runneth unto the city Heroam, that by the means thereof ships might pass and repass with their merchandise from India into Europe, and not be discharged till they came into Italy. So that this Sesostris was the first king which built great carracks to travail this way, but this enterprise, for all that it took, little effect. For if it had, Africa had then been made as an island, all compassed with water, being no more ground between the sea and sea than the space of 20 leagues or 60 miles. About this time, the Grecians gathered together an army or fleet, which is now called Argonautica, whereof Jason and Alceus were captains general. Some say they went from the isle of Crete, others from Gracia, Greece. But whensoever, and you see they got some messed up letters, right? This is old book, 1600. But whensoever they departed, they sailed through the Propontique Sea and St. George's Sleeve unto the Euxine Sea, where some perished, and Jason thereupon returned back into Greece. Alceus reported that he was driven with a tempest to the lake Matois, where he was forsaken of all his company, and they which escaped with great travail passed through by land unto the ocean sea of Almain, where they took shipping passing the coast of Saxony, Friesland, Holland, Flanders, France, Spain, Italy, and so returned unto Peloponnesus and Greece, as far as the province of Thrace, discovering the most part of the coast of Europe. Strabo, alleging Aristonesius the grammarian, showeth that after the destruction of Troy, Menelaus the king came out of the straits of the Levant seas into the sea Atlantic and coasted Africa and Guinea, and doubled the Cape of Bona Speranza, Cape of Good Hope, southern tip of Africa, and so in time arrived in India, of which voyage of his there may be many more particulars gathered out of the histories. This Mediterranean Sea was also sometimes called the Adriatic and the Aegean and the Herculean Sea, with other names according to the lands, coasts, and islands which it passeth by, running into the great sea Atlantic along the coast of Africa. In the year 1300 after the flood, Solomon caused a navy to be prepared on the Red Sea at an haven called Ezion Geber, to sail to the East India, whereby opinion standeth the islands called Thracis and Ophir. This navy was 3 years on this voyage, and then returned and brought with them much gold, silver, cypress, and pine wood, whereby it seemeth that those places and islands were those which now be called the Lucones, Luquines, and the Chinese. And I believe one of these was Japan or something like that. For we know other parts from whence some of those things are brought, or wherein navigation was so long since used. It is left us also in histories that a king of Egypt called Necho, desiring greatly to join the Red Sea with the river Nilus, commanded the Phoenicians to sail from the Strait of Mecca to the farther end of the Mediterranean Sea, to see if it did make any turn back again unto Egypt. Which commandment they obeyed, sailing toward the south, all along the coast and country of the Malind. And if you look up the Sofala, it's the east coast of Africa. And so it says, all along the coast of the country of Malind, Quiloa, Sofala, till they came to the Cape of Bona Esperanza, again, Good Hope, finding the sea continually on the left hand. This part's kind of confusing because they're sailing south along the east coast of Africa, the east side of Africa, and so the coast should be on their right hand. I'm assuming that they sailed in between Madagascar, right? And that's how they got a coast. Oh wait, no. Look, they say finding the sea continue on the left hand. When they had doubled the cape and found the coast continue on the right hand, they marveled much at it. Notwithstanding, they continued their course forward toward the north, all along the coast of Guinea and the Mediterranean Sea, till they came back again to Egypt, whence they first went out, in which discovery they remained 2 years. And these are thought to be the first that compassed by sea all along the coast of Africa and sailed round about it, the Phoenicians. Okay. In the year 590, before the incarnation of that dude, right, there went out of Spain a fleet of Carthaginian merchants. Okay. And the Carthaginians, the Phoenicians, Carthaginians would be Phoenician, I'm not sure. Anyway, Carthaginians were in Spain, and the, 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 the town in Spain is called Cartagena, and there's a Cartagena in South America too, I believe, Colombia. And if you look up Cartagena, it's new Carthage. Okay, so in the year 590, before the incarnation of, there went out of Spain a fleet of Carthaginian merchants upon their own proper costs and charges, which sailed toward the west through the high seas to see if they could find any land. And they sailed so far that they found at last the islands which we now call the Antilles and Nueva España, New Spain, which Gonzalo Ferdinand de Oedo saith were then discovered. Although Christopher Columbus afterwards by his travail got more exact knowledge of them and hath left us an evident notice where they be, but all these historians which wrote of these Antilles before, and the Antilles actually was the name for America at one time, was just known as the Antilles, Antilia, before, as of doubtful and uncertain things and of places undiscovered, do now plainly confess the same to be the country of New Spain. Okay. In the year 520, before the incarnation and after the setting out of the aforesaid army, Cambyses, king of Persia, took Egypt. hopefully a lot of this mean something to somebody. I can notice I don't fully understand it, but I definitely notice the significance of a lot of these things. Um, but this Persia, I have no idea, took Egypt, after whom succeeded Darius, the son of Hystaspes, and he determined to make an end of the enterprise which King Sesostris had begun. If they had not told him that the Red Sea was higher than the land of Egypt, and that by means of that of the salt sea coming into the river Nile, all the province would have been lost and undone for hunger and thirst. For the fresh water of the river Nilus doth overflow the whole country, and the inhabitants and cattle have no other water than that for their drink. Whereupon he left his first purpose of prosecuting that enterprise. In the 200th year before the incarnation, it is written that the Romanes sent an army into India by sea against the great Khan of Cathay, which, passing through the Strait of Gibraltar and running to the northwest, found, right over against the Cape Finisterre, 10 islands wherein was much tin, and they may be those which were called the Cassiterides. And being come to 50 degrees of latitude, they found a strait, and passing through it towards the west, they arrived in the empire of India, and fought with the king of Cathay, and so came back again unto the city of Rome. Which thing, howsoever it may seem either possible or not possible, true or not true, yet so I find it left to be recorded in the histories of that time. After that, the Romanes had gotten the most part of the world. There were in that age made many and notable discoveries. But then came the Goths, Moors, and other barbarous nations, and destroyed all. For in the year 412, after the incarnation of Serapis, they took the city of Rome, and the Vandals came out of Spain and conquered Africa. And in the year 450, the king called Attila destroyed many cities in Italy, at which time the city of Venice began. And in this age, the Franks and Vandals entered into France. In the year 474, the empire of Rome was lost and fell from the Romanes to the Goths. After this came the Lombards into Italy, namely in the year 560. In this period, devils were let loose on the earth, which took the form of Moses, and many of the deluded Jews were drowned in the sea. Also about this time, the sect of the Arians prevailed greatly, and at this time one Merlin of England was famous for his prophecies. To be short, in the year 611 sprung up the mahumetane sect and morisco regiment, which by force invaded both Africa and Spain. The Mahometanes are um, the Turks. By all this it may appear that in that age all the world was in a hurly-burly, and all places very tumultuous, and for 400 years was so defaced and benighted, insomuch that traffic and merchandise ceased, for no nation durst trade one with another, neither by sea nor land. Nothing is then remained steadfast, neither in monarchies nor kingdoms, signories, religions, laws, arts, sciences, nor navigations, nor so much as the records and writings of such things did remain, but were all burnt and consumed by the barbarous cruelty and unbridled power of the Goths, who became so covetous and ambitious that they purposed of themselves to begin a new world and to root out the memory and blot out the knowledge of all other nations besides. Shalom.